Isn't it incredible how humans can search for and, well, even find meaning when facing the absolute worst? It really speaks to something deep within us.
It absolutely does. And that's precisely what we're diving into today with Viktor Frankl's powerful book, Man's Search for Meaning.
It's such a foundational book.
Totally. And Frankl wasn't just, a theoretical psychologist sitting in an office. He lived through the unimaginable horrors of Nazi concentration camps.
Exactly. Stripped of everything, family, possessions, his entire former life. He observed and experienced firsthand what it actually takes to keep going.
Yeah. And from that darkness emerged this profound understanding of our fundamental need for purpose, for that essential why.
So our mission in this deep dive, for you, the learner, is really to pull out the core of Frankl's insights.
Right. We want to give you a clear, efficient understanding of how to find meaning, how to navigate intense suffering, and how to recognize that core of inner freedom that can never truly be taken away.
Kind of a shortcut to some really life-affirming ideas.
That's the goal.
And the book itself has a pretty clear structure, doesn't it? He starts with his personal experiences, the camps.
The psychological journey, really.
And then he introduces his therapeutic approach, logotherapy, which grew right out of those brutal realities.
Exactly. It's grounded in that experience.
Okay, so let's start there with those early days in the camps. What were the immediate psychological impacts upon arrival? The shock.
Well, imagine this. You're crammed onto a train for days, arrive exhausted, terrified,
Just unimaginable.
and are immediately thrown into the system designed purely to erase your identity. Possessions gone, clothes stripped away, you become a number tattooed on your arm.
It's dehumanizing from the very first second.
Precisely. The initial trauma wasn't just physical, it was a systematic dismantling of the self. It forces the mind into this kind of survival mode, marked by shock, but also, and this is fascinating, a bizarre sense of detachment.
Detachment? How so?
It's like a defense mechanism. He talks about the shaving of HUDs, bodies, a complete stripping away of who you were. And amidst this horror, you see this grim sense of humor emerge, almost.
Gallows humor.
Yeah, exactly. And this detached curiosity. Frankl even writes about his own curiosity, like wondering if he personally would survive it all, as if observing from a distance.
Wow. The mind trying to create space just to cope.
It has to. And what's also striking is the physical endurance. Despite horrific conditions, minimal sleep, no sanitation, starvation rations, people endured things that, well, textbooks said they shouldn't have been able to.
Which seems completely counterintuitive, right?
Right.
You'd expect collapse.
You would. But then, alongside that resilience, there's this constant pervasive thought of suicide.
The book mentions Frankl's own determination not to run into the wire. Can you explain that phrase?
Yeah, running into the wire was the term, the grim term, for deliberately touching the electrified barbed wire fence. It was a common, tragically common way to end it.
Just awful.
But for Frankl, even in that absolute despair, there was this fundamental refusal. And then you had the selections.
The constant fear of those.
Terrifying process, always needing to appear fit, strong enough for work. Because if you didn't, if you seemed weak, or like what they chillingly called a Muslim.
Which meant someone who had just given up.
Exactly. Someone who'd lost all will,
Yeah.
emaciated, just gone spiritually. They were almost certainly sent straight to the gas chambers. It shows how tied together psychological despair and physical survival were.
It's just relentless, dehumanizing pressure. You had to fake strength even at your lowest point.
And the book makes this powerful point. These psychological reactions, no matter how extreme they seem to us now,
Yeah.
they were actually a normal reaction to an utterly abnormal situation.
That's a crucial distinction. It reframes it completely.
It does. The psyche tries to adapt, even to the unimaginable, just to preserve itself. But as that initial shock wore off, a second phase took hold.
Which was
Apathy, a kind of emotional numbing.
another form of self-protection, maybe. Shielding yourself from the constant brutality.
Exactly. You had to. The book recounts beatums for the smallest things, or sometimes for no reason at all, this constant threat. It just led to a blunting of emotions.
Even towards death itself.
Yeah. Frankl tells this story. Seeing a corpse just outside his window and reacting with this chilling lack of feeling. It shows how stark that numbing became.
So the inner life just kind of shrinks.
It regresses, yeah. Under that relentless strain, it shrinks down to the most basic needs and desires, consuming hunger for food, desperate longing for warmth.
And thoughts of home, family.
Oh, intensely. That profound ache for loved ones. It's like the constant fight for bare survival, just push everything else into the background, inner life forced down to a primitive level.
It's almost impossible to truly grasp. But then, amidst all this suffering, the book's central message starts to come through, right? This idea about meaning.
Absolutely. This is the core. Frankl quotes Nietzsche. He who has a why to live can bear with almost anyhow.
That quote hits hard in this context.
It becomes the bedrock of his whole philosophy. Because even there, in the camps, individuals still had that ultimate human freedom.
Which was?
The ability to choose their attitude, how they would face their suffering. That couldn't be taken away.
And the book gives these incredibly moving examples, doesn't it? Prisoners comforting others, sharing their tiny bread rations.
Yes. Those small acts. They seem small, but in that context, they were monumental acts of human spirit. Proof of that inner freedom.
Just shining lights in the darkness.
Totally. And the book also talks about how crucial it was to have a future goal, something to hold on to aim for.
But there's that heartbreaking story, too, about what happens when that hope gets shattered. The composer.
Ah, yes. The composer who dreamed of liberation on a specific date, he lived for it.
And when the date passed.
The disappointment was just overwhelming. His health declined rapidly and he died soon after. It's a devastating illustration of how losing faith in the future could lead to, well, spiritual and physical collapse.
He connects that to the increased death rate around Christmas 1944, right?
Yeah.
When hope for liberation by then faded.
Exactly. It underscores Frankl's point. It's not about what we expect from life, but maybe more about what life expects from us.
How does he mean that? What life expects from us?
Well, he talks about finding meaning actively through creating something, doing a deed, but also contemplatively, through experiencing beauty or nature, or especially through love, and critically through how we bear our suffering.
Suffering itself has a meaning.
Or rather, our response to it does. He emphasizes the uniqueness of suffering. Each person has their own burden, their own cross to bear, and in that, their own unique opportunity to find meaning in how they bear it.
And love plays a huge role, too, even when people are separated. His silent conversations with his wife.
Incredibly moving, aren't they? That connection, even in absence, sustained him. It was a powerful source of meaning.
It shows meaning isn't just about grand achievements.
Not at all. And beyond love, he points to other surprising things, like art and humor, as weapons of the soul.
Humor. In a concentration camp.
Yeah. Invented jokes, amusing stories told amongst prisoners, and moments of art, like hearing violin music. These were ways to momentarily transcend the horror, to reclaim a sliver of humanity, of self.
Wow. Little pockets of resistance, almost.
Kind of. He uses this analogy of gas filling a chamber.
How does that work?
He says suffering is like a gas. It completely fills the soul no matter how large or small the chamber is. Whether the suffering seems objectively huge or relatively minor, it can consume you.
Okay, I see.
But conversely, even the smallest joy, the smallest bit of relief, can also feel immense in that context. It speaks to the relativity of it all.
That makes sense. Now, the book also briefly touches on the guards.
Yeah.
It wasn't just a monolithic block of evil.
No, and that's an important, nuanced point he makes. He saw different types. There were the sadists, certainly, but also guards who were just desensitized, emotionally blunted by it all.
And even some who showed kindness.
A few, yes. He mentions a camp commander who secretly got medicine for prisoners using his own money. Small acts, but significant.
So what's the takeaway there?
It reinforces Frankl's idea that humanity isn't divided neatly into prisoners and guards or any other groups. It's divided into, as he put it, decent people and indecent people.
And you find both kinds everywhere.
Exactly, in all groups. It's a sobering but crucial insight about human nature itself.
Okay, so from these intense camp experiences, Frankl develops his therapeutic approach. Logotherapy. Let's unpack that. What's the absolute core principle?
The core, really, is the will to meaning. Frankl believed this is our primary motivational force as humans. It's what drives us most fundamentally.
More than pleasure, like Freud thought, or power, like Adler.
Yes. He saw those as important, sure, but secondary to this deep-seated need to find and fulfill a sense of purpose in our lives.
And what happens when that need isn't met, when people lack that sense of purpose?
That's where he talks about the existential vacuum. It's that feeling of emptiness, meaninglessness, aimlessness.
That sounds incredibly relevant today, maybe even more so than when he wrote it.
I think so. He connected it to boredom, that kind of Sunday evening dread he calls Sunday neurosis.
Yeah, I know that feeling.
Right. But also potentially leading to more serious issues like depression, aggression, addiction. It's like that void, that vacuum, gets filled with unhealthy things when meaning is absent.
Why does this vacuum happen, according to him?
Well, he suggested it arises partly as traditional values and instincts that used to guide us weaken. We're left sort of adrift without a clear what for.
Okay, so if the will to meaning is key and the lack of it creates this vacuum, how does logotherapy say we find meaning?
He outlines three main avenues. First, by creating a work or doing a deed contributing something.
Okay, action and creation. Makes sense.
Second, by experiencing something or encountering someone. This could be appreciating beauty, nature, art, or especially experiencing love, really
Yeah.
connecting.
Experiencing and connecting. Got it.
And third, and this is so powerful, coming from him through the attitude we take toward unavoidable suffering.
So even when facing something terrible we can't change.
Exactly. Even then, we can find meaning in how we face it. The choice of attitude remains. Even a helpless victim can turn their predicament into a human achievement by the stance they take.
That leads to his idea of tragic optimism, doesn't it?
Precisely. It's not about pretending things aren't bad.
Mm-hmm.
Life includes what he called the tragic triad: pain, guilt, and death. They're unavoidable.
Sounds pretty bleak.
Well, yes, but tragic optimism means remaining optimistic in spite of them. It means finding ways to turn suffering into achievement, guilt into an opportunity for positive change, and life's transitoriness into an incentive for responsible action.
So it's not superficial positivity.
Not at all. It's a deep belief in the unconditional meaning of life, a meaning that includes suffering. Remember his story about losing his scientific manuscript in Auschwitz?
Yeah, his life's work.
And then finding that fragment of a Hebrew prayer in the pocket of a coat given to him? For him, that wasn't just coincidence. It was a challenge almost to live his thoughts, not just write them. Life constantly asks things of us.
And logotherapy deals with these big questions, not just symptoms, what he called metaclinical problems.
Exactly. The fundamental human problems of meaning, purpose, existence. Things that aren't necessarily neurotic in the traditional sense, but deeply human concerns that bring people seeking help.
So how does logotherapy actually help people with these? Are there specific techniques?
Yes, there are a couple of key ones. One is called paradoxical intention.
Paradoxical intention. Sounds intriguing. How does it work?
It's basically about wishing for the very thing you fear. By deliberately trying to make the feared thing happen, you often break the cycle of anticipatory anxiety that fuels it.
Can you give examples?
Sure. The book mentions a doctor who was terrified of sweating excessively in social situations. The fear itself made him sweat more.
A vicious cycle.
Right. So the logotherapist advised him to deliberately try to sweat profusely whenever he met someone he feared would trigger it, to show them just how much he could sweat.
And what happened?
The humorous detachment, the paradoxical wish, broke the cycle. He found he couldn't do it when he tried. And the fear, along with the sweating, subsided. It requires a degree of self-detachment and humor.
Fascinating. Almost like facing the fear head on, but with a twist.
Exactly. And the other main technique is dereflection.
Dereflection. So turning attention away.
Precisely. It's about redirecting your focus away from yourself and your problem and onto something or someone else.
Like the example of the woman struggling with frigidity.
Yes. Instead of hyper-focusing on her own performance anxiety, she was encouraged to focus entirely on her partner and giving him pleasure.
And by shifting the focus outward.
The problem resolved itself. It highlights how sometimes our intense self-monitoring and self-focus actually create or worsen the issue.
So both techniques seem aimed at breaking these self-defeating cycles by changing perspective.
That's a great way to put it. They empower the person to step outside the problem, in a sense. And this connects to Frankl's strong critique of what he called pandeterminism.
Pandeterminism, the idea that we're just products of our conditions, biology, psychology, environment.
Exactly. Frankl fiercely rejected that. While acknowledging those factors influence us, of course, he passionately argued that they don't fully determine us. We always retain a degree of inner freedom.
And he used the camps as the ultimate proof, right?
The ultimate testing ground. He saw people there descend into utter depravity, behaving like, well, his word was swine. But he also saw others behave like saints, sharing their last crust of bread, comforting the dying.
Same conditions, vastly different responses.
Precisely. It showed him definitively that even in the most extreme circumstances imaginable, humans retain the capacity to choose their response, to take a stand, to find meaning. That inner freedom persists.
That emphasis on our capacity to choose, even in the face of overwhelming adversity, feels like the most powerful and enduring message.
I absolutely agree.
So as we kind of wrap up this deep dive, what are the key insights you're really taking away? What should our listeners hold on to?
Well, I think first, just the sheer power of the human will to meaning. It's fundamental.
Right. It's not a luxury, it's a need.
Exactly. Second, that meaning isn't some mystical thing out there. It can be found in life through creating, experiencing, loving, and crucially, even in how we face suffering.
Suffering isn't meaningless, or doesn't have to be.
Right. And third, that core of inner freedom, the power to choose our attitude, our response, no matter the external situation. That's always ours.
So how can you, the learner, listening right now, take these profound ideas and apply them in your own life, with your own challenges?
That really is the crucial question, isn't it? Maybe take a moment to think about a challenging situation you're currently facing, big or small.
Okay.
Instead of just focusing on the difficulty, maybe ask, is there a potential meaning here? An opportunity for growth or for demonstrating some value or for connecting with someone? How can I exercise my inner freedom in how I respond to this?
It's shifting the question, like Frankl said,
Mm.
not just what do I want from life.
What does life expect from me right now in this situation? It invites responsibility and action rather than passivity.
It's a subtle shift, but it feels incredibly empowering. It's not about ignoring difficulty, but finding purpose within it.
That's tragic optimism in action, finding that yes to life despite everything.
Ultimately, man's search for meaning isn't just a memoir or a psychology text, is it? It's more like a guide.
A guide to navigating the human condition, absolutely. It leaves you with this deep understanding that even when things seem darkest, that search for meaning, that choice of attitude, can genuinely light the way forward.